Hi, my name's Frank Rogala. I'm a composer for film and TV and also a co-owner of Mackinaw Mill Creek Camping, the location in the campground. At the time, it was not developed. There are campsites there now, but the overall way that the trees and everything lay out has not changed. So we were out exploring. My father, I think, had just purchased the land and he had started a campground, opened it in 1964 on 6 acres, and this was the next parcel over that he had gotten. We now call it our boat launch area because the water levels have changed so much. There's not a lot of boats that get launched there, but it's kind of like a little pier that people use to go out on. Mackinaw Mill Creek Camping, we were just voted the favorite campground in Michigan, which is saying something because Michigan's got some beautiful campgrounds. We ended up in some national top 10 lists, and so it's an extremely popular campground. But back then, everything was just pretty much wilderness in that area. Still today, for hundreds of acres around us, it's all wilderness. Now, directly across from the campground is Mackinaw Island, and if you go down the shore, because the campground is expanded, there's also a view of the Mackinaw Bridge. This is located on the Straits of Mackinac, where those giant oceans of water, Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, come together. We used to run all over the countryside. You know, it was the late 60s. Kids and dogs ran around without leashes. We were down there just fiddling around in the lake. I'm not sure whether it was spring or fall, but it was not cold enough that we had to be wearing jackets, I remember. It's just lucky that we used a family photo that must have been taken at that period, because I was, as the oldest boy, kind of in charge of my youngest brother, Edward, changing his diapers and teaching him how to walk. So looking up that he was born in 1966, this had to be somewhere late 66, maybe 1967. So at that point, I would have been about 10 years old. I was born in 1957. My brother Chris is a couple years younger than I. Well, let me preface this by saying my cousins who live downstate Michigan, I later found out during this period of time, there was so much unidentified craft activity that they would go out in their cars at night and chase them through the fields. There was a lot in the newspapers and on TV. Cattle mutilations were happening, so it was a little scary for a little kid to see this. But anyway, we turned around, and right above the trees, not high in the air, was this big kind of elliptical craft. And even though it was close, I could not see any details on it. It was kind of just like a bright, gleaming white. And it was as bright as the sun, but it didn't hurt my eyes, I remember. And I'm light sensitive. That these glasses are not sunglasses. I have them. It's a long story. I have severe scotopic sensitivity, so I'm really sensitive to light. So anyway, the strange thing was it was that close and it was very big. I mean, it was at least 100 feet across. And I know that by kind of, how low it was to the trees and how wide it was. We watched it, and then suddenly it was gone. Now, we didn't see it go anywhere. We didn't see it disappear. It was like we're standing there looking in that direction, and then all of a sudden we're standing there and the wind's blowing and it's not there anymore. So I don't know whether it felt like some time had passed, but we didn't see it leave. So strangely enough, it wasn't very long after that, I woke up and went to go to the bathroom, and something was wrong. I looked in the bowl and it was all blood. I ended up that I went to the doctor, and I think this was his way back then of kind of making sure it wasn't somebody in the family abusing me or something, because all of a sudden myself and my 3 brothers all ended up in the hospital. And one was an ear infection, or 2 had ear infections, he said, and was something else. I really, thinking back, think it was the doctor wanting to make sure that there wasn't some kind of abuse situation going on. So my poor dad. Anyway, and at the same time, my youngest brother at that time, second youngest brother, Vince, was waking up with night terrors, just like screaming and yelling. And I remember waking up, I would hallucinate that there was faces looking all around me, and it was really dark and it was really scary. And then I remember waking up and walking through the dark house and just feeling like I'd done something horrible. I had this horrible guilt, like something terrible had happened, like something that as a little kid I had no experience. I had never done anything that bad, but it was just this overwhelming feeling of darkness and so that's pretty much all I know. I probably, if I had somebody hypnotize me, might remember something else happened, but I also know there's people that have been hypnotized and remembered things that they wish they hadn't. So I haven't been really anxious to do that. My brother Chris that was with me, if you see us today, you'd see we don't agree on much of anything, but he still remembers this and still, it's still the same story that I have. It was so vivid for me that the details of the situation are just locked in my head.